Good evening, everyone, and welcome for tuning in to this podcast. I hope everyone who's watching now are all safe at home. Do remember to always wash your hands and avoid going anywhere for the time being. My name is Shini, and I'll be your host for tonight's program. The reason we are doing this series of programs is because we think this will be able to help in uplifting the spirit of everyone in this period of long lockdown. This broadcast initiative is helmed by a young team of volunteer musicians training on other non-performance skills for productions such as this. Do help us do the polling for your kind feedback, and if you have any questions to ask our guest speaker, you are more than welcome to type them in the Q&A box below. For those who are watching from YouTube Live, do subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook page. The JPO are very honored to be able to invite Mr. Fu Ming as our special guest for tonight's program. Mr. Fu Ming was awarded the coveted PSC, Public Service Commission of Singapore, SSO, Singapore Symphony Orchestra Scholarship to study at the Royal College of Music, London, UK, with Rodney Friend, a former concertmaster of the New York Philharmonic and the BBC Symphony Orchestra. He was later accepted into the Conservatoire de Lausanne in Switzerland to study with French violinist Pierre Amoyal, a protege of Yasha Heifetz. In 2012, Mr. Fu Ming was appointed as head of strings at the Nanyang Academy of Fine Arts NAFA School of Music. Mr. Fu Ming has been invited to teach and give masterclasses in music festival in Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, Taiwan, and Italy. In the capacity of leader and concertmaster, Mr. Fu Ming has been a regular guest leader for the Singapore Lyric Opera Orchestra, SLO, and the Philharmonic Orchestra, TPO. Mr. Fu is a frequent guest player in JPO. He has performed several times with JPO. He was the soloist at last year's JPO fundraising concert in December, along with his NAFA students to help in outreach training, workshops, perform together with the JPO members too. Without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Fu Ming.
Hi, Shini. Nice. How nice to see you. Happy to be here.
Happy to interview you. And
Thank
it's
you
a
very
pleasure
much.
and honor to be interviewing you tonight.
Really, I'm very excited to be talking to you.
Okay, so before we start with the question, can you tell us a little bit about the video we saw in the beginning?
Oh, that one. Well, the group that you just saw, it's a group in Singapore called Remix. Actually, yeah, you know, right? Remix. Well, from the name itself, the word mix, we should be able to guess that it's a group that is very interested in mixing up music. It's more like mixing up different genres of music together. That particular piece was the Carmen Fantasy. It's very classical, but it was part of a bigger concert where we were featuring even more contemporary and even more new music. So we are an ensemble that plays quite a wide range of repertoire.
Interesting. So let's move on to the question, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first question. Are there any tertiary education in Singapore that provides scholarship to study music? And what are the requirements for applying scholarships there?
Well, in Singapore, there are two sort of universities that offer degree courses in music. I think mostly music performance. One is in the National University of Singapore, that's the NUS, where they have a music department or faculty called the Yong Shuto. That's quite famous. The other one, which is actually a much older school, a private school, called the Nanyang Academy of Fine Arts. It's about 80 to 85 years old. It's actually quite long and established school. And the School of Music was formed some 30 to 35 years ago. So right now there are two. So these are the two universities that offer scholarships to study music in Singapore.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so how do you approach in expressing the characteristics in playing a repertoire to meet the composer's intent?
Well, if you are if you're referring to how to play as close to the composer's initial intention, to be very honest, it's very hard to do that because they're all dead. Okay, and we are not we and all of us, none of us have a direct line to them, you know, wherever they are. So there are a few things we can do. The most obvious thing we can do is we sit down and we need to look carefully at what is written on the manuscript. Of course, these days we are very much into being as close and as accurate as we can to the original. So if we can get a version of a score that is called text, which means naked text, which means it's unedited. Okay, that means naked in the sense that it's unadulterated by any editor. That means they haven't added in their own interpretation or phrasings or dynamics, so that we can see for what it is worth what the composer has written. And then I think that's the first thing we can do is to try to go from that beginning to see how we can be as close to the original intention. Of course, the next is we have to sit down and start to think. We may start to think and analyze why the composer wrote it this way. Why did he put a forte piano? Why did he put a sforzando here? So if you have the benefit of having a musicologist or a very good analytical musician with you, they can analyze the music for you through the change of harmonies, and it can infer a few things. And then from there, you make some decision. Or you can also, with the knowledge that you know, you try to interpret yourself what he's trying to say. Because for a lot of people, we say, oh, that's quite a hoity-toity idea. What do you mean by he's trying to say? Well, actually, sometimes, especially in the Baroque days, the composers like Bach and even earlier, they don't have dynamics, they don't have anything, phrasing markings, because the way they shape their music and the way they shape their notes, it is already very evident what they want to say. Like, for example, a rise in a third, or a fall in a minor third, or fall an octave, or rise in a major tenth, things like this. They all have very strong emotional and intellectual connotation. So for them, it's very easy. But ever since Beethoven, he started to defy the laws and defy all authorities. He started to defy the rules also of common musical composers. Then he started to say, I want to make music to express what I feel inside. So this is where we have to start to analyze through the music, and also, if we can, analyze through history, through reading his bio, to reading other people's analysis of his life, so that we gather more information. We can make some kind of intellectual decision on how to do a piece of music. But it's very hard to reach this kind of position because all of us are so finite in our ability to amass information. The best thing is to keep on learning, keep on reading, and keep on exposing yourself to lots of different kinds of music, not just Beethoven, but by different instruments he wrote, music of different composers, music of different genre, music of different eras, so that you can see how music is being used. Then you can have an idea, that maybe that's why Beethoven wrote it like this, or Bach wrote it like this, or Mozart wrote it like this, you know. So it's up to interpretation, but there's always some form of discipline around this freedom. We have to find this discipline so that it makes some sense. I use a lot of words to explain a very simple concept. I do not know whether you got that. Is there anything that you'd like to ask?
The next question. So I would like to ask, what is your advice to students when learning or practicing a new piece so understand what they are playing?
Okay. There are two schools of thought. Some teachers and musicians, they feel that, oh, when you learn a piece of music, you look at the notes slowly and learn the notes slowly and figure out the technique for that. And then when you, after a few months, then you try to put the music together, the dynamics and the dynamics, the expression, this and that. Okay, so that is a very traditional, methodical way of doing. But there is also another contrary, opposite view. That is, you need to start from the musical point of view. So, for example, you may have a piece of Mozart concerto, and you look at the full score. Oh, you know how it sounds, but he wrote the forte here. He wrote this there. He wrote the oboes or the flutes rising here, or this and that. The sound that Mozart wrote to accompany the violin. Maybe he's doing this. So when you start to have ideas, the ideas will start to solidify in how much you can do and you can't do within your solo line. So that already will give you some idea what to do or what not to do, rather than to blindly learn a piece for 6 months before you start to change its dynamic. So there are two ways, okay? But to put it in a nutshell, if we're talking about technically, of course, we start slowly, but slowly in time. When you reach some very technical place, even take it out of context for a little bit, start to analyze what you need to do, the bow, the techniques needed, what is difficult about it, whether it's timing, the physical distance, or your fingerings, there's something wrong, or is a technique that you don't know. And then you strengthen this by doing it slowly, many times, getting it faster. Or, and this is one of the best ways, you supplement, just like taking vitamin supplements, right? You add the study of scales, the study of etudes studies that may pertain to certain problems that you have, and slowly you will build your technique up around the piece. A lot of people, they just play the music as it is. But if you want to learn the piece well, sometimes you need guidance beside you to give you more backup and more fundamentals for you to build better reserve. Okay, it seems like we lost Shini. She's back, yes. Shini, are you there? Hi, you're back? Yeah, we lost you for half a minute, yes.
Sorry.
Okay, just to recap what I said when you were away, I was saying that sometimes it's good to identify the problems that you have technically, and then you bring the problems to scales, invent some scales, or modify some scales, or modify some etudes for you to learn a certain problems, like octaves or thirds or certain strokes, and then you build a better reserve, and then when you bring it to the repertoire, it becomes much easier.
Oh, okay. So moving on.
Yeah.
Why does music matter in education, and what is the role of it?
Shini, how come you ask so deep questions? Well, I think when I think when you talk about music, I think generally we can say why does art matter, right? Because I think in schools we don't just learn music, we also learn other forms of art, and some school programs, they have very good programs for us to be exposed to even more forms of art rather than music and drawing, right? Um, I think it's important from a couple of angles you look at it, right? Just from a human, biological, scientific point of view, if you look at mankind, right? You and me, the human species. I mean, you look at all the animals around us, all the living things around us. There is always some kind of communication between them, and even men, we communicate with each other. But it is only with humans that our communication is very complex. You know what I'm saying? For example, when we go to the street, when dogs bark at each other, they use barking to communicate some things. Or cat, they might hiss at each other or meow at each other to say a few things, you know. But for humans, we can make noises, we can mimic other animals, we can mimic another person, we can draw, you know, just to get something across other than danger or where the food is. I mean, I think for a species is really special that we can explain to each other an idea, to tell each other a story, or to encourage one another, or to tell another person how we feel. You know, so I think that is really incredible. So in a sense, I feel that arts, to be involved in arts is to be alive in a aspect of being human, to be alive, to be able to communicate, right? If we don't do that, if we just learn our maths and numbers, in some sense, it is a communication, but I just feel that there's more to it than that. I'm not saying that art is in itself complete, but no, I think human beings, we have a whole array and kaleidoscope of experiences and abilities that all of us, we should learn to do most, if not all of them. Okay, so that's from one point of view, a biological, scientific point of view. And if you want to look it from a religious point of view, okay, it can be any religion. Okay, especially in religion, there's a function of accountability. That means we have to answer to someone higher than us. So, and a lot of people, we also believe that man is created out of in the image of God. Okay, so that means when we look at a human being, oh, that is an image of God. That means God is something like that. And the thing is, when you question a bit deeper, what does God do? God is not a mathematician. He's not a physician. Some say he's a doctor. But then the first thing you read in the Bible is God is a creator. You know, he's creator, I think if you look at it deeper, he's an artist. You know, if you think of it this way, right? He created us. So in a sense, we are in his image. We are also creators, little creators. So in a sense, that is why a lot of people find so much pleasure, fulfillment. This word fulfillment is so deep. It's like, even if you're not a Christian, you can find fulfillment in making music. You can find fulfillment in making art, draw, sculpture, produce music, even if you're not religious. So I think from this point of view, we are being who we are to create. And music is just one small part of it. So I think in education, learning arts, it's opening a door for the young children to explore this part of their humanity, you know, to be able to to create something out of nothing and to put into uh, the physical, something that is forming an idea, which is no other species can do. Only humans can do, not even monkeys, they have their arms and legs, they can't do it. Only humans can make a instrument out of a few pieces of wood and a few strings, and they can make some sound, and this sound can make you happy, or this sound, if it's played correctly or badly, it can kill you. So I think it's really, really, really amazing if you look at it from this way. So I think arts is always very important. In fact, in Singapore, many years ago, we used to have this advertisement on the bus. I do not know what product it is for, but it quoted something like that, right? That a wise emperor before, he said to someone, if you want to know how your villagers live or how your citizens live, you listen to the songs they sing, or you listen to the art they create. Because I think when we create something, when we produce something, we are producing from what is inside and what is inside. Yeah. Anyway, it's too deep for me to answer. I don't but I hope you understand what I'm trying to say.
I'm very, very thankful for you to answer that type of question, because it's so deep and you answer it with so meaningful, with so much meaningful advice and all those things. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, thank you. Listen, I'm not the only one who feels like that. In fact, if you look around you, the musicians around you, if you question them a little bit, if you ask them the same question, they may not answer in the same words, but you can feel that we are doing something that is fulfilling, and this fulfilling comes from somewhere that we cannot account for, but we can only account to, So anyway.
Okay. Yes. So moving on to the next question.
Yes.
So what are some skills that students can learn from music education other than playing an instrument?
Okay, this is another very loaded question, right? If you talk about skills, you might be referring to abilities that you can use in a career. But for me, the most difficult thing about living in this world, right? The most difficult thing and the most fulfilling thing is to be able to relate to another person. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? And when you learn music, it is not the music itself that makes you feel good and that's it. But somehow it makes you feel good and you know that someone else can understand what you feel. It is a communication. It is that conveyance of this idea again, and the conveyance from the persons to you. When you learn music as a student, you are learning how to communicate with your teacher. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The teacher is trying to make inside you that is from nothing into something. And that is the most painful thing, because you don't understand what he's talking about. And then if this teacher is very insistent that you must understand it, and once you get it, a light bulb comes on. Again, your teacher is creating something. But yet, relating with the teacher is also a skill, because teacher are not all the same. Even if they are not in music, you go along the street, you meet anyone, they're not all the same. When you talk to all of them, any one of them, you realize that you have to talk to them all very differently. You have to react differently just to understand a few things, because the language might be the same, but the ideas are different, or the way it comes out different. So for me as a student, because I've been with from teacher to teacher, as I move from one teacher to another teacher, from one level to another level, I realized that they all speak very differently. When I move to a new teacher, I have to learn their new language, which made me appreciate what my previous teacher taught me. Okay, because when I was my previous teacher, I don't understand what he's saying, but I'm just trying to follow. When I grew up and with another teacher, oh, that's what he meant. And then when I went to another teacher, this teacher has another approach, oh, that's what my previous two teacher meant. So I've had this experience where I learned from my teacher in Singapore, and then I went to another teacher. He opened up another part of my mind and a part of my soul, musical soul. I progressed a bit. I went to another teacher. I progressed again. When I went back to my first teacher, just to consult with him and to play for him, he said, "Oh, Ming, I'm so happy that you remembered everything I taught you." I was like, wow, that was an incredible thing to say, because sometimes we think that, oh, we go to a new teacher, we change. Well, in the sense we do, but we are actually amassing information. And sometimes at different stages of our lives, each teacher has to teach us very differently. So as you get older, you learn more, you start to appreciate more and more your previous teachers and what they taught you. It is all here. So I feel that the most important skill is when you become an adult, when you become a teacher, and we start to relate to more students and you had related with teachers. You might have 3 or 4 teachers in your life, but you might have 30, 40, or even 100 students. But each student is a very different person, and you get to see 100 different characters. And maybe you can only know how to relate to 2 or 3 or 4, but you have to learn. So I find this skill, because you are asking about skill, this skill is the most difficult to learn. You are assuming many things, right? The word vital already, we can discuss why is it vital, why is it not vital? And then the word performing, why is it a performance? For example, you and I are talking right now, okay? We are expressing one idea to another, we are communicating. So in a sense, it's an art. But when you say, oh, let's perform communicating and speaking, let's say live right now, then everything starts to go wrong. You know why? So why is performance, the word performance, so loaded? And why is art performance, music performance so loaded? Why can't we just play for another? I think this is where we have to we are dealing with the imperfection of man, that we are not perfect. We cannot control our nerves. When we perform, the act of performance, we have to be on stage. We are being put in the center of a spectacle. We are being judged. A lot of things are riding on it, what will happen to me if I don't pass this exam? What will parents do to me, or what if I fail one year? This and that. So a lot of things that is very human messes you up. Okay, and then it distracts you from what you can do normally. Let's say if I were to play a piece for you normally, I would play maybe 80% of my ability. But you tell me, oh, I have to play live in front of an audience of 2,000 people. I may get down to 20%, I have to warm up properly and then this and that. Why is it that? I think it's because there's a lot of things that is involved that's not supposed to be involved, and it's very human. It's very emotional. It's very psychological. And then we have to practice performing to overcome and to understand this, and to learn to live with that, and to deal with it, and to know how to overcome it, or to live with it, and to with all these conditions, or try to get rid of the conditions, to do what we do in the arts. So it is very important for a teacher grooming young musicians to have some experience. You don't have to be very experienced. You don't have to go on stage every week, but some experience of going on stage, so that they can sympathize, they can empathize, and they can know what you're going through when you're on stage so that they can help you. For example, learning on stage is also a very painful thing because you have to fall a few times before you can get up.
Yeah.
And then you only have to fall, you must fall a few times so that you can get up and stay stronger. You know what I mean? Yeah. As you
learn from your mistakes.
That's right. Yeah. And then sometimes performances also show us where our preparation is the weakest. So that's why we have dress rehearsals. We have run-throughs so that everyone, we can go through the 20 minutes of a symphony or sonata or concerto to see where are the weak spots so that we can fix them. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So next question. Throughout your career, what are the things other than music have you learned that you feel contributed significantly to your development as a musician?
She, how old are you? How come you're asking questions like a philosopher? Have you got help with your questions, Liz? I'm guessing somebody is helping you, right? No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Listen, I think it's like my part of my answer before. I think it's all part of the human experience. Music is a small part of our lives. There are other things like being with another person, learning to deal with another person, and other aspects of art, other aspects of life that they all intertwine. Okay, so it is always good to have other interests. It's also good to have other activities, like for example, what JPO is doing for outreach. That is very good because you channel your arts to another avenue, and that wakes up another part of your psyche, or humanity. So I would say that I try hard to have some other interests to keep myself alive other than just music. Because if you think music all the time, it can be very boring. Okay, although music in itself is never ending because you can play so many different types of music with so many types of ensembles and so many people. It's really fun, but sometimes you need a break. So that is why a lot of musicians they have other hobbies. A lot of musicians they go mountain climbing, rock climbing even. I used to have a student from France. He played pretty well, but he's rock climbing, so his fingers are so strong. It's like, right? So I have students, European students who ski very well. I had a student who was a badminton champion. Things like that. I have colleagues. They do some amazing things also. So it's a whole brew of different interests that keeps you alive. So that when you come back to music, it's very fresh, and you may find that other interests it help to feed your interest in music, and sometimes it might give you inspiration.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. On behalf of JPO, we would like to thank you once again for your performances with JPO last year in December. Would you like to give an advice or suggestions to our outreach program as well as our broadcast program?
I think if you're asking for advice for outreach program, you're asking the wrong person, because I find that the JPO program, the outreach program, is so fantastic. It is so fantastic that NAFA has agreed for me to bring students to JPO and to KK to learn and to observe how you guys do things there. And we even have to document what we are doing there to report to NAFA, and we hope to be able to learn even more from the management and also on the ground how to do what you guys do. Of course, in KK, the country, your country is so big, the land is so wide. You have people spaced out a lot, much further from the town. You come across various types of demographic, much, how to say, people of very diverse needs, you know. And I find what JPO is doing is really amazing. Like, for example, the concert. I'm not alone to say, because a lot of people they said the same thing to me. Well, not to me, but with me, that not only was the concert by JPO moving, but it was the sight of all the kids playing together. They form little orchestras, they come together. And some schools, we know their background, they are so poor, they have no money, and yet you see the faces on the children, the smile, and then how they make music is very moving. So yeah, like I said, you're asking the wrong person. In fact, I would love to go back and just to absorb more of what you guys are doing. As far as the broadcast program, I would assume that broadcast, you mean the regular JPO programs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I think he's doing pretty well. Otherwise, it wouldn't have be able to branch out to do this outreach work. You know. So I can only wish you guys more power and urge all of you who are in JPO who are listening right now, and all of you who are not in JPO, and to lend a hand to the Jesselton Philharmonic Orchestra, to give a hand or to make a donation in what they need to do for this fantastic program. It is really wonderful program. So I'd like to congratulate all of you.
Thank you very much. So before we move on to the Q&A session, my last question for you is, this is a fun question. So imagine if you can travel back in time, which of the 4 periods of classical music would you like to travel back to, and which musician from that period would you like to meet?
Four periods. That will be classical, Baroque, Romantic, and
20th century.
20th century. Would you think that we are living in the 20th century or 21st?
21st.
Okay, listen. I think the obvious answer would be Baroque, because it's so far away from us. We have no idea what things are like, how musicians play. So I think for an era, for a period, that would be very interesting for me to see. But for composer, I can't think of a Baroque composer, but I can only think of a classical composer, and that is Mozart. I would like to see him, what he's like in person, you know, because at the moment, the image I have of Mozart is the image I have of the film Amadeus, which is a completely crazy guy, but it kind of suits what he's written so far, you know. So that is why that movie is quite amazing. Yeah, I would say the Baroque era, but I would like to see. I don't think I'd like to meet Mozart, but I would like to just to get near him to see what he's like.
Okay, so now the YouTube questions.
Hey.
Okay. Can Mr. Fu give some tips for a violin student who is left-handed?
I have a colleague who plays very well the violin, who is left-handed. I think I have a student too who plays very well, who is left-handed. This is a private student in Singapore. Yeah. So some people say left-handed people have some issues with playing the violin, but from what I know, no, I haven't seen it. Maybe in the beginning, the left-handed the musicians, they want to start to do this way because it's very natural. But if you turn it around, I'm sure you can do it. So far, I haven't seen a left-handed musician who can't play the normal way. Of course, there are left-handed musicians who play totally the other way, but that gives some problems when you want to audition for jobs and this and that. But I wouldn't say I wouldn't have some tips, any advice, but to say that listen, other people can do. They have no problem. I would think that you have no problem. Now, if it's any word of advice or encouragement, I was told this fact. It's a fact. They say it's a fact because I think they might have exaggerated, right? They say that if you can play a piano or a violin or any instrument, just to play one melody, coordinate yourself, right? Left or right-handed. They say, right, your brain is among the top 5% in the entire world. Can you believe that? I don't know where it's from. They say it's top 5%. And then I use this, of course, to encourage my students. Listen, you got a top 5% brain here. You know, why is it you can't pass your English test? Things like that, So some people, they believe it and they achieve it. Some people, of course, they think it's utter nonsense. But then I find that they believe that they believe that they don't believe. That's why they don't achieve. I feel that it's all here. So for our friends who are left-handed, I would say to you, hey, more power to you. But technically, think of it as an advantage, because I'm right-handed. Sometimes I wonder, why can't I be left-handed to move my fingers more accurately? Then why am I stuck with more able fingers just to hold the bow in a certain way? It's very strange. Wouldn't it be advantageous to be the other way? Sometimes I think like that. So if I'm correct, so I would say that our left-handed friends are in a better position than me. So I would say, listen, if you believe that you're disadvantaged, then more power to you. If you believe that you are advantaged, I say, yeah, more power to you, and suck it to them, because basically I see that it should have no bearing on what you can do. Already, if you can play a tune, you're top 5%. You just remember that.
Okay. So the next question is also from YouTube. Hi, Mr. Fu. Knowing how occupied you are, would you like to share with us how you juggle your time in between performing, directing remix, teaching in NAFA, and playing in SSO?
Okay. This question makes a few assumptions. The assumption is I'm super occupied and I do juggle between things. Okay, listen, I do have a few things on my plate. Sometimes I do have to juggle. Sometimes I have to sacrifice some things to practice. And sometimes I have to sacrifice practice to do some other things. I'm sure this is the same for all adults and all adult musicians, especially musicians with family and children. You have to, it's also a juggle. So I'm no different from any adult musician. We all juggle with many responsibilities and chores. But my advice to you is this. At some point as an adult, you will have to start to make this kind of adjustments and juggle. And when you reach that age, you will start to have to depend on the hard work that you have put in when you're young. So the more work you put in, the stronger the foundation you have, and the easier you'll be able to juggle when you are older. Okay, I say this not because I have success in juggling. I say this because I don't have success in juggling, and I sort of regret not having worked as hard as I should have when I was much younger. So I'm giving all of you an advice at my expense, if you want to say that. So juggling between all this, I think it's going to be very normal. It's just that on paper, it seems like I'm juggling between a lot of jobs, but actually it is not any different from anyone, any musician in this world. And for me, sometimes when I have an important concert coming up, I have to sacrifice a lot of time to just to get my work up. Sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I'm not. And sometimes I realize that, hey, some of my colleagues, they have less trouble than me. Or some of my colleagues, they have more trouble than me, you know, when they need to put up a concert at our age. So this is where I start to see that, oh, it's a type of work you've done, the reserve you have. So my advice to all of you youngsters out there, practice as much and learn as much and be as solid a player as you can while you still can.
Thank you for that. So the next question is from SinZX. Hi, Mr. Fu. Is playing the electric violin same as the normal violin?
I think this question is from Jessica Lee, right?
Not yet.
Not yet, huh? Okay.
The next one.
Listen, I've only had one time playing the electric violin, and this is remix. One time, and it was a double concerto for electric violin and electric bass. My experience was very short-lived because I was playing the electric violin just like playing a normal violin, where I could have really exploited all the pedals and all the sound tunings and this and that, but I didn't know how to, and I didn't go into it. So so I'm not in a very good position to say what's the difference. There are some musicians who are real masters at playing both instruments. Okay, for me, the biggest difference is the feedback. On an acoustic violin, you feel the violin immediately under your chin. You feel it here.
Yeah.
But for the electric, you have to. You feel like a ventriloquist. You know that your voice comes from a speaker that is like 5 feet away from you. And have you ever held a proper electric violin?
No.
Have you ever seen a proper? It is made from pure wood. It is about 20 times heavier than the violin. It is pure. It's pure wood. I played on that one, and then I nearly broke my neck. Okay, so I didn't have a good experience. At that time, but I should have bought myself a much lighter one, like all the Bond girls are using. You know, yeah. But the thing is, a true electric violin is pure wood, and sometimes you are still able to see some jazz violinists play on pure wood violin, and it's just amazing how they can really hold up the violin with the hand. I'm sure the muscles are really up to, it's really heavy. So like I said, I'm not experienced enough to comment. But if you like to go into play electric violin, I strongly suggest that you get a very light plastic one, the one that you can put it with a headphone or with an small amp, and that is a very good start. Yeah.
Okay. So the next question is from Miss Jessica Lee. Hi, Ming. Remix seamlessly bridges contemporary with classical music, much to the appeal to the younger audiences. Have you attempted with jazz, pop? Please share your experiences.
Well, what Remix does is, at the moment, we take jazz, we take pop, we take contemporary, and we rework it in a classical way to basically to convey to our audience music from the Baroque era, the classical era. How is it different from the music in contemporary era like now? What makes a hit? For example, Bach has many hits. The Beatles, they have many hits. Bee Gees, I mean, even Britney Spears or Lady Gaga have many hits. What makes a hit? And will these hits be just as popular or enjoyable if the style is different, if the context is different? So that is what we do. But if I understand the question correctly, have we ventured into jazz? Actually, yes. The closest we have gone into jazz is I think last year we played a concert by the French composer called Claude Bolling, and you can see the entire concert on YouTube. We just put it up, and that was a rework of a jazz piece written for a famous violinist, but we reworked it for orchestra, for strings. We haven't changed much of the music, but just the delivery. So Remix has also been invited to play for some pop music in their own music as background. So yeah, we are also, I believe all classical musicians are versatile. Maybe we may not be able to improvise like a lot of jazz musicians, but I think if you put the notes on music, and if we know how the music goes, and if we know the style, how to feel the beats and this and that, I think most classical musicians we can do it, right?
Okay, thank you. So the next question is from Yap KV. What do you look for while choosing a violin?
You as in me, or you as in general? If it's me, right? I will look. I look something that is closer to the voice that I have as a violin. Okay, this is what I mean, right? Some violins, they sound very masculine, a big bassy violin. Some people love that. You know, when they play, it's all thunder and boom, lightning. Some violins are more slender, more feminine, so they sound finer and sweeter. But it can also mean that they can have a lot of power. It's just that the delivery of the power is slightly different. The tone of the type of violin is very different. And these types of different violins, they are different because of the model they are made with. So you have the very masculine model, which makes a huge, robust, deep masculine sound. And then you might have a violin that is slightly less forceful, but more singing, more sweet. I tend to go for the sweeter, the feminine type of sound. It's how the person's envisage. I have friends who love the other kind, you know, and I have friends who, if you give them a very nice Stradivari, they probably can't make a sound of it because they don't know how it works. They don't know how to make a sound of it. For example, you give me a very big Gesso, I probably also can't make a sound out of it because the touch is also very different. It's like driving different sorts of cars, even different sorts of race cars. It's how do you drive, Shin? Do you drive?
No, not yet.
Okay, so I'm preaching to the deaf. I'm joking. But you know what I mean, right? It's like like choosing a keyboard for your computer. Some like it very hard, some like it very shallow, very soft. So for me, I like a sound that is a bit more bright, more ethereal, more singing. Yeah, so this is how I choose a violin. Now, as to other aspects of choosing a violin, then you have to want to choose a violin that is best value for your money, then you look into whether it is a branded violin. If it's new violin, you can see the sound and you can make an assessment whether it's the sound for you or it's going to grow into a sound that you like. Because new violins, the sound will change. Some do change better, some do not. So sometimes it's a risk. Yeah, so there are many things. But at the end of the day, for a performer, if you are a big soloist, they go for bright projecting sound. Okay, for orchestra, for a chamber musician, they look for for an instrument that has a big range. You make different types of sound and different types of nuance. For an orchestra violin, you probably want to find one that doesn't, the one that can support your partner and support the section, but it doesn't stick out. It also depends on how you play the instrument. Okay. If you want to buy one for your own enjoyment, so you just buy the best sounding violin your money can buy. Of course, buying a violin is like an antique. So if you buy the right antique.
So this is from an anonymous. Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay, I was saying, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I was saying buying a violin is also like buying an antique. So if you may, it depends on the antique itself, what it is, and the condition of the antique and the maker. So sometimes for us, if we spend a bit more money to buy a good instrument, we also want to protect our investment. So we need to buy something that is certified with good papers, good certifications. Yeah.
Okay. So this is from an anonymous attendee.
Hey.
Do you ever teach a hyperactive child? How do you handle them?
I have had experience with, I can't say all sorts of students. I've had hyperactive children before. I end up playing with them. I have students who are so reticent that you have to tell them everything to do. You know, I don't know. The difficult thing as a teacher is to keep them interested. But for me, I am quite fortunate because I teach in NAFA, where the students are of a certain age, and the students they are driven by something. They are driven to do well. They are driven to want to get a degree. They're driven to want to do well. You know, get exams, get a job. So communicating with these students is easier for me because we can speak the same language. But communicating with even with students like that, some are hyperactive, and some have needs. You know. And this is where I'm still learning as a teacher how to meet every student at their needs. But having said that, these students, they are also here for a reason. They are here to find a foundation, a grounding, a skill set for them to survive when they graduate. So there is also a list, I call them a list, but a set of foundation that they have to achieve. So this is where we have to draw the line, where to meet them and where they must meet us. As for hyperactive, if I have a student who is hyperactively interested in the violin, I think it would be a joy to teach. Right? If I had a young student who's hyperactive about playing with my curtains or my cat, you know, or dog, okay, then I have to find some ways to kill them. But I would say that hyperactivity is a good thing because it's energy, but it's a challenge for the teacher to draw their attention. And sometimes it is not entirely the fault of the teacher that they cannot draw the attention. being hyperactive itself, sometimes it's also, again, I'm not an expert. We have to teach the child how to focus. Let's face it, you and me, sometimes we don't focus, right? When we are young, right? Even when we are old, we don't focus because, oh, we want to do this. I want to eat that ice cream before I do this. I want to do this tomorrow. I want to practice next day. But sometimes we just have to focus. So I think part of learning music is also part of learning discipline. So I think the challenge of teaching hyperactive or explaining discipline to them, that would be a challenge. But I think in my little limited experience, once the child learns and experience and tastes some little fruit of success, and from the success, they realize that in order to get this success, they must put in so much work. I think this kind of work will bear fruit. They will start to learn. So again, back to your previous question, is performance very important? I think for young children, it is, because they go on stage. For those high achievers, they want to do well, and they often the first few performances they realize that, hey, why is it not going as well as I hope to? They may have a good cry, with the parents, and then after that they need to sit down with the teacher. The teacher needs to analyze to them, this is what happened, this is what happened, this is what happened. Because during your lessons you did this, I told you to do this, you didn't do this, or you overdid this, or you didn't do that. So we go through a series of we call them post-mortem, all right? Yeah.
Okay, so this is the last question for tonight. So for those who, okay. So the last question is, why music and art in mainly Europe countries are entwined with their daily lives, whereas in Southeast Asian countries is more like a skill whereby most eventually abandon or disregard? How do you change the perspective and take matters as an educator in making progress among your students and the community?
Srini, is this your friend, or did you type this yourself?
It's from an anonymous attendee.
It's okay. Listen, it's a very difficult question to answer. Like I said, it's so loaded because we are also talking about differences in culture. The East and the West, they are inherently different. Okay. Again, the East in modern times is also very different from the East in the past. Let me give you an example. When I was studying in Switzerland, I was staying in a youth hostel where I was the only musician staying in the hostel. The other people staying were all university students from the Polytechnic, from the university, they were studying law, they were studying engineering, they are studying physics, they're studying mathematics, everything they are studying except music. And I was the only musician studying in the conservatoire. And then we all stayed in the same hostel, same dormitory. But the thing is, the moment they saw me taking a violin case across the kitchen, because I was given the key to a little dungeon to practice by myself. It was very nice of them. At least I had a huge room. It was a conference hall. They will say, Ming, Ming, because they call me Ming, 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 come, play us a tune, play us a tune. They will be so excited that a musician is walking by because I'm a musician. It's not because it's patronizing or not because it's condescending. It's because, wow, for them it's a wow, I'm a musician and there's a musician among us. Ming, come and play us a tune. Okay, I will play them a tune, I'll play this, or play us Four Seasons, I'll play a few tunes. And sometimes there was once I started to play a few tunes and I started to do a few musical tricks. started to change the expression. I changed the color. I changed my mood. And the Europeans, my friends, they said to me, wow, I didn't realize that the violin can make so many types of sound. For me, the experience was so jaw-dropping. I mean, let alone they accept a musician without any prejudice, but they are so astute, not even musically, but just artistically being aware. They could tell me what I was doing on the violin, and they are not violinists. Because they noticed I was making different color. They call it sound. You know, why do I? How did I make the sound there? I didn't really, and they were like in a maze, you know. And sometimes I would talk to them about art, this drawing, that drawing, and when you listen to this mathematician, French guy, or from Germany, from Switzerland, from Libya, from even from Vietnam. They are French-speaking Vietnam students there, and they will talk about appreciating art. It's like common to them. So if I read the question correctly, I think it is all inculcated into a culture where the expression, the human expression, whether it's through arts or music, through dance, it is all part of their culture. I think in the past in Asia, where our music is not as complex as, say, the German music or Italian music, I think then when people sing, they also sing from their heart. They also play the musical instruments. Something happened. I think something must have happened maybe during the first two World Wars. I do not know, right? I think after the World War, this is my guess, maybe our parents and our grandparents, just for survival, because they came from China or where else, they came down to Singapore, Malaysia, you know, East Malaysia. They had to survive, and they had to fight to survive, to make money to survive. And to protect us, they instill in us, make money to survive, because they care for us, they want money for us, you know, they want us to make money. So yeah, but fortunately, I have a father who also grew up in the Second World War. He led a very hard life, but strangely, he had a love for music. So I was told this story by my father that the moment he had his first paycheck, he paid for singing lessons. I think he must be listening right now, right? So I'm sure he would love to tell his story, but he's not mic'd up. So he singing lessons. I think my mom used to play the piano. She still does, I think. She plays for her friends. They sing together. So I think I grew up in a environment where it is not discouraged. So I'm lucky in that sense. So how do we inculcate? I think for me, as a tutor, as an educator, I think the most important thing that if we show them, our students, whether private or in a university like NAFA, that we are passionate about this, some of them do pick up this passion and they get influenced, and they will influence other people. I believe that there were some students who were likewise affected. Maybe I wouldn't say that maybe by the way I teach, but maybe I was young. I was loving music a lot, and I think they picked up on that. And a lot of my younger students, they are now musicians. So I'm very happy. But a lot of my also good students, they are now lawyers and doctors, also very good. They are still playing fantastically well. I'm very happy for them. Like I said, you know, we have the top 5% brains. I hope you right. Yeah. So I think on this level, we have to start personally, where we have to intoxicate our, that's a bad word, intoxicate our students with the joy of what we are doing. This is, I think this is one thing. I have another student who went to abroad to study, and then he gave up the music, and then now he's in politics.
Oh, wow.
Right? When I said I spoke to him, I think he spoke candidly with me, or maybe he was joking with me. He said, I said, "What, you don't want to do music anymore?" He says, "No, but I still love music. I still play the violin, but I realized that perhaps I could influence more if I was in politics." You know, so I think people, each one, we have our own circle of influence. We have our own circle of friends that's given to us, that we are put into, and we do our best to influence who we are given to influence, rather than to think or how can we, at least not for me, because I'm not put in that kind of position. But if you are put in this kind of decision where you make policies and you decide directions of the whole school education system to go, I say yes, go for it. If you are put there, you certainly are put there for a reason. Otherwise, for us musicians, I think we work from the ground and on the ground level, and we try to infect, as in like the virus, right? Sorry. In fact, as much joy and as much joy is the word of what we do to our students. I think we can start from here. That's all. I think that's most I can do.
Okay, so unfortunately, we must end this program. So on behalf of JPO, we would like to thank Mr. Fu Seming again for dedicating your time and energy by joining us for tonight's program. We would also like to thank the attendees that have tuned in for tonight's program. You guys have been awesome. I hope you guys have learned as much as I have. For those who are waiting for your questions to be answered, please stay as Mr. Fu will type out the answers for you. If you want to review tonight's and previous broadcasts, you can watch it at the JPO YouTube channel. Do remember to subscribe and like. Now, Mr. Fu will lead the prayer. Please pray in whatever faith you believe in.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time that we can share this word with everyone, share this time with everyone. We thank you for the miracle of technology, that even in this time that the virus is keeping us apart, keeping us isolated, that we can still commune and we can still share. I pray that you would continue to bless all who are listening in right now, to be safe, to be healthy, those who are ill to recover fast. And I pray for the wonderful people in JPO, that they continue the good work they're doing, especially with this family program. And I pray that your hand be upon us all the time. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Once again, we would like to thank you, Mr. Fu, for sharing with us. And to the attendees, we hope you had a wonderful experience. Tomorrow night, we'll have Miss Gina Medina as our guest speaker. So stay home, stay safe, and good night.
Thank you.